Ever since his first appearance in 1938, Superman has been the gold standard for superheroes. He's the Man of Steel, the last son of Krypton, the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. But what if I told you that this iconic hero, this symbol of ultimate good, was never meant to be a hero at all? In fact, his original concept was the complete opposite. He was created to be a villain. Let's rewind the clock to 1933. Two ambitious young creators from Cleveland, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, were desperately trying to make their mark in the world of science fiction. They self-published a fanzine called, appropriately enough, Science Fiction. In the third issue, they published a short story titled The Reign of the Superman, and the protagonist of this story was nothing like the hero we know today. This original Superman was a homeless man named Bill Dunn, a mad scientist. Professor Ernest Smalley plucks him from a breadline and offers him food and a new suit in exchange for participating in an experiment. Dunn agrees, and Smalley gives him a potion that grants him incredible mental powers, mind control, telepathy, and clairvoyance. But this newfound power doesn't inspire him to help humanity. It corrupts him completely. Realizing he's now the most powerful being on Earth, Dunn kills Professor Smalley to keep the secret of the formula for himself. He then sets his sights on world domination. He uses his mental abilities to manipulate stock markets, incite wars between nations for his own amusement and profit, and crush anyone who stands in his way. This Superman wasn't a savior. He was a telepathic tyrant, a bald, menacing figure who saw humanity as his plaything. He was, in every sense of the word, a super-villain. The story ends on a chilling note. The potion's effects wear off, and Bill Dunn loses his powers. He returns to being a nobody, a forgotten man on the breadline, haunted by the memory of the godlike power he once wielded. He's left with nothing, knowing he could have ruled the world, but now he can't even get a decent meal. It's a dark, cynical tale, a classic sci-fi warning about the corrupting nature of absolute power. So how did we get from this bald, world-conquering villain to the blue-eyed cape-wearing hero? Well, Siegel and Shuster's story didn't exactly set the world on fire, but the name Superman stuck with them. They saw potential in it. They just needed a new concept. Siegel, inspired by heroic figures from mythology like Hercules and Samson, and pulp heroes like Doc Savage, decided to flip the script. What if someone with superhuman abilities chose to use them for good instead of evil? This was a much more optimistic and, frankly, more commercially viable idea. They re-envisioned Superman, not as a mentally empowered human, but as a physically powerful alien, the sole survivor of a doomed planet. They traded telepathy for super strength, flight, and invulnerability. The bald villain became a handsome, dark-haired hero. His motivation wasn't world domination. It was protecting the innocent. They gave him a secret identity, the mild-mannered Clark Kent, to ground him and make him more relatable. They even gave him a moral code, instilled by his adoptive parents in Smallville. This was the birth of the Superman we recognize. But getting this new hero published was another epic struggle. Siegel and Shuster spent years pitching their heroic Superman to newspaper syndicates and comic book publishers, facing one rejection after another. Editors thought the idea was too outlandish, too juvenile. One publisher even told them it was a rather immature piece of work. It's hard to imagine now. But for a long time, nobody wanted Superman. Finally, in 1938, a new company called National Allied Publications, which would later become the legendary DC Comics, was looking for a lead feature for their new comic book, Action Comics. They were on a tight deadline and remembered seeing the Superman pitch. They bought the rights from Siegel and Shuster for a mere $130. That's about $2,800 today, for the rights to a character that would go on to generate billions. It's one of the most famous and, frankly, tragic deals in creative history. And so, in June of 1938, Action Comics #1 hit the newsstands, featuring a striking cover of this new hero lifting a car over his head. The public's reaction was immediate and explosive. Superman was a sensation. He was the hero. A Depression-era America needed a powerful champion for the common man, fighting corrupt politicians, slumlords, and gangsters. He was an instant icon. It's fascinating to think about this what-if scenario. What if Siegel and Shuster's original villainous concept had been the one to take off? The landscape of pop culture would be completely different. The very definition of a superhero might not exist as we know it. Characters like Batman, Spider-Man, and the entire Marvel and DC universes might never have been created in the way they were. The heroic archetype that Superman established became the foundation for everything that followed. The idea of an evil Superman didn't die though. It's a concept that writers and creators have returned to again and again. Think about stories like Injustice, where Superman becomes a global dictator after a personal tragedy, or characters like Homelander from The Boys, or Omni-Man from Invincible. These are all, in a way, spiritual successors to Siegel and Shuster's original, forgotten creation from that 1933 film. They all explore that dark question. What happens when the most powerful man in the world is also the worst? This journey from a malevolent, power-hungry mastermind to the ultimate symbol of hope is one of the most incredible origin stories in all of fiction, not just for the character, but for the creators themselves. It shows that sometimes, the greatest ideas don't arrive fully formed. They evolve, they change, and sometimes, they become the exact opposite of what they started as. The hero we all look up to was born from the ashes of a villain we were meant to fear, and that, in itself, is a pretty super story. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Would you have been interested in a comic series about the villainous Superman? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into comic book history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. See you next time.